West Virginia-raised composer whose music reflects the times in unexpected ways, whether the era is one of conflict or peace. George Crumb has won numerous awards for a distinguished career in composing, recording, and teaching, including a 1968 Pulitzer Prize in music. He grew up in Charleston in a house where the State Cultural Center is now located. Last month, Crumb visited the Cultural Center to be inducted into the West Virginia Music Hall of Fame. It's where he also spoke with Anna Sale.
Music can be a fusion of so many diverse, almost contradictory elements. Any artist in any category is always searching for that central message that our DNA is so completely unique. You know, we want to find our musical DNA and project that in whatever form we're working.
So if you were to put to words what that sort of George Crumb essence is when you listen, and when you're listening for how much of it is in one of your pieces, what are the elements of that?
Well, I always say I'm not terribly self-analytical, but people always mention the kind of mystical feeling. There's a kind of a spirituality in my music. I think that comes largely too from important influences like Debussy, Gustav Mahler, Bela Bartok, and our own Charles Ives. All of those were, curiously, all turn of the century. They straddled the 1900 century change. And they were all also, there was a spirituality in all four of those composers that I think influenced my own music.
It was good for the Hebrew children, it was good for the Hebrew children, it was good for the Hebrew children, and it's good enough for me. Glory, 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 hallelujah, hallelujah.
I think it's interesting how when I'm asking about your music, so much of what you're talking about is other music.
Yeah, that's another element. I think all the music in the world converges at a certain point, and it's all of the ancient and old, you know, and recently old music too. I feel that Brahms can be contemporary in our thinking. In other words, one can make contact with any point in the past. I guess you'd call that kind of postmodernist. And I would have to describe myself as in that category. I think all the things in the world, there's something Hindu about that, you know, that time really is circular, and it can intersect, you know, any past thing and project future things even. So that's my own philosophy, that almost nothing is unimportant, you know, anything can be referred to obliquely or directly. You know, any moment in the past, any moment in another style of music other than your own culture, for example. So, yeah, those things always seemed important to me.
There's so many influences that get fused in your work. When you think about the sounds that connect you back to West Virginia, what are those sounds?
Well, I used to express it like every composer maybe is kind of inherits an acoustic, and that acoustic is natural, and it comes from the place where he grew up. And I always thought that West Virginia, River Valley, represented a kind of an echoing, reverberant acoustic, and that in fact describes my music pretty well. So that if I were born in a desert area, the acoustic would be different, the New York City acoustic would be different. But here it's a question of echoes and these haunting sounds that cross the river at night, you know, that bounce back and forth between the hills. That's the essential acoustic in my music.
Wow, that's so interesting.
That would be, I guess, that would be the stamp of West Virginia in my music.
When did you sort of realize that and put that to words, that that was something that was showing up?
I think that was intuitive. I only kind of thought it out how maybe it worked later, but it was always in my music from the earliest pieces, this quality.
What's your favorite part of the process, your enterprise, when you have your garage where you compose, where you're alone and in sort of a small space, and then on the opposite end you have great music halls filled with people listening to your music, and you know, what do you most like about
I'm never quite always alone in my garage. We have a family of dogs in the house, so they have their own you know, necessities, and always had kids in the house, you know, the 3 kids were, and I rather grew up, if I had perfect quiet, I probably couldn't write a note of music. Some composers go to places like the MacDowell colony, you know, so they can go out and be with nature, like Thoreau suggests, and I think I would dry up in an environment like that. I would need the domestic element, you know, always has a kind of a background. I like background hum, you know.
So you need real life.
Yeah, like the normal events. I wouldn't like to think that composing is so removed from all those things, you know. It's just something you do. I guess I think of it as, I think of the craftsmanship aspect of it. It's really just something you do. You're trained to do. You try to do it the best way you can, and it's nothing special about it. I'm sometimes asked, you know, which is more important in music, the technical aspect, you know, or the kind of spiritual or expressive side of music, and I usually answer that. My own thinking is that these things have to be in balance. And in thinking about all the music of the past I loved, my favorite composers, it is, in fact, always a balance. The craftsmanship is always there, and the imagination and the potency of the ideas is there. It's a combination of 2 things, and neither would work without the other. Sometimes you find an example of a composer that's a little too heavy into the technical side, and his music can sound academic, university music, I call it. Or if there's a shortage on the technical side, you might begin to think of an untrained composer that's really not able to get the ideas to speak. Dilettante, you know. So maybe everything in life is a question of balance, you know, between 2 opposing things.
George Crumb has more recognition coming to him. In February, he'll be honored at a concert at Carnegie Hall.